just consider two things. Do you want or need to go less than full time for your own health and your own life? And can you afford to go less than full time?
Welcome to the Life As podcast, a series of conversations with inspiring people about what life is like in a number of roles you can do before or during cardiology training. I'm your host, Jonathan Bray, and over the next couple of months, we're going to bring you weekly, concise and insightful discussions. On behalf of the British Junior Cardiologists Association Starter, we're really excited to bring you this series. Today, I've got the pleasure of being with Josh Wilcox. Thank you very much for your time, Josh.
Not at all. Happy to be here.
So to kick things off, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
I am an ST5 Cardiology trainee. I've just finished my academic component of my academic clinical fellowship by NIHR ACF. I've run out of academic time, so I'm a fully clinical registrar for the first time in my cardiology career. And I have just started on my second period of less than full-time training, and my first period overlapped into the start of my ST3. And because of less than full-time training, progression being what it is, I started in 2018, would you believe? But before that, I'm actually slightly I'm unusual in lots of different ways, but in that I started off as a peninsular trainee, so I was Devon and Cornwall based, but was lucky enough to be allowed to do an interdeanery transfer from the southwest to South London. So I'm currently working at St Thomas's Hospital and loving my experiences there and all the amazing people I'm meeting and all the amazing cardiology I'm seeing.
Fantastic. And you've got a lot of experience of less than full-time working. So that's what I'm hoping to focus on today. To lead things in, would you be able to share your reasoning behind becoming less than full-time?
Sure. Kids. Lots of them. There are so many valid reasons, and I think it's called option 3 these days. I don't know. The purely I want to be less than full time because I don't want to work full time choice becoming more prevalent in different specialties. There are so many valid reasons to go less than full time. The overwhelming majority, I get the impression, is for my reason. So I became a slightly unexpected father just after F2. I was older anyway, so it was probably overdue at that point anyway. So it was F3. God, I'm going to forget how old my kids are now. And it was an enormous shock to a very green system, as I think it is for everybody. But then, like a good cardiologist, I piled into my decision and had twins within they were born before my first was 2, so we had for a while 3 children under 3, and honestly, before I had kids, I had no real idea of these and commitments and what that meant for social life, for tiredness, for money, but it is annihilation of all of those things, a beautiful, wonderful, magical annihilation of everything that you define as yourself. And I remember very, very clearly as a core medical trainee, as it was then in Plymouth, walking into my supervisor, who was a renal physician and one of the most no-nonsense men I've ever met, and saying, Peter Rowe, I'm going to name and shame him because he was just awesome as a supervisor, and he gave me the most important advice, I think. I said, I'm going to quit. I can't do this. I'm commuting from Plymouth, which is an hour and 10 minutes over some beautiful countryside, but an hour and 10 each way. And I'm not sleeping enough, and I'm not seeing my kids enough for my mum to either kill me or divorce me or both. So I'm quitting. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to come out of core medical training. And he said, why don't you just go part-time? I don't know why. I was just like, part-time. Never thought about that. And it was just a revelation. So I did. That was my first period of less than full-time training. I don't mind calling it part-time. People understand part-time, but less than full-time training, flexible training. And it was a pain in the, can I swear? It was a pain in the arse.
Yeah.
It is a pain in the arse. The only thing that wasn't a pain in the ass was actually enacting the less than full time. Every time I've done it, and I've done it 3 separate times now, once for cardiology training when I started, once for core medical training when we were talking about it, and once again recently, every single time everybody's just said, yeah, sure. And it's happened within days or small weeks, and people are very, very happy to do it. So my experience of going less than full time, I don't know how replicated that is across regions or other people, but has been very simple. And it just happened in core medical training, and it slowed my training down, and I missed a job offer because I wasn't progressing at the right time, so I wasn't going to be an ST3 when I wanted to be, but it all worked out in the end. And I couldn't recommend it more. I actually also did shared parental leave. I was, I think, the first doctor in my trust to do that. And I took 3 months off when my twins were born. 2 months? 3 months off when my twins were born. And the way that works is it comes out on my other half's maternity leave. So you kind of divvy up the maternity leave between the two of you. And it was, back then it was a financial annihilation because the rules weren't quite as fair. They're still not perfectly fair. They weren't as fair then. I took a real big financial hit.
Really?
But as with less than full time, shared parental leave was the same. You'll never regret spending time with your loved ones and your kids. And I think that's the growing realization of all of us as trainees. And when I made the decision to go less than full time recently at St Thomas's, my wonderful supervisor said I was feeling really guilty about it, as I think we all do when we go less than full time. You know, I'm going to leave the rota in the lurch, and other people are going to have to cover for me, and oh god, it's going to be very difficult for the hospital to find people. Most of us feel an element of that guilt to a greater or lesser degree. And my educational supervisor just said, well, why would you feel that way? Everybody is going less than full time. I think there are 2 or 3 other registrars on the entirety of my rota that are full time. The rest of us are less than full time. The SHOs are 80 to 90%, I think, less than full time. The received wisdom before and especially after the pandemic is that other things are important. And I think people are getting that now, and less than full time will become more commonplace. We've really branched out there. I'm sorry, I just kept talking.
No, absolutely. The anecdote you led with about the fact that you hadn't really even considered less than full time as being an option.
No.
I feel that that's quite a traditional thinking, that people don't really want to commit to being less than full time or part time. You've sort of mentioned about reasons for why that might be, leaving the rota in the lurch, but I'm wondering if you could expand upon why people might not want to, or why people don't do it.
I mean, there's a gender bias there, isn't there? A massive one. The presumption is 2 weeks paternity leave, and then I'll see you later. I'll see you in 3 weeks time, shall I? After this massive life-changing event. Whereas for women, the presumption is maternity leave, and then are you going to come back full time? Maybe you're not. And it's bad that women are presumed to be the ones that should go less than full time. But it makes the decision as a man really hard in many ways, because you get a lot of people saying, are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Do you really want to do that? And I really respect this person so much in so many ways, but it's stuck in my head so vividly when I was struggling a little bit with full-time as a cardiology reg, and I went down to less than full-time in the Peninsula. And this person said, well, before your kids are 13, they don't really know that you're there, do they? And I was thinking, that's not how I feel. But that is quite a gendered, opinion. And I think you'd find, us being a male-dominated specialty, a domination of that view amongst cardiologists, but I think not amongst recent parents, not amongst a growing selection of men, and definitely, I would say, not amongst women who have a much more acute perception of what the important bits of life are.
Do you think that opinion is changing?
I hope so. I think so. I mean, like I said, shared parental leave is a growing phenomenon, isn't it? Yes, it is. If our rota is anything to go by, and that can only be a good thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you talked about some of the advantages of less than full time. I'm wondering if you can sort of encapsulate that.
I mean, there is only one advantage of less than full time, but it's the advantage, isn't it? It lets you do that thing that you can't do, whether that's caring for somebody or being a, Olympic level sportsman, or in my case, knowing that my kids know who I am, and not missing bedtime, and not missing, well, not too many bedtimes anyway. You still miss a fair few, but just feeling fulfilled from being a part of your children's life
and having your life around it.
There's nothing else really, is it? I should. It's children is the same every single time. There's always one dimension, which is your kids, that is just outranks everything else by a country mile. Is a solar flare in the darkness compared to the rest of these things. Having said that, everything else is worse.
Yeah.
And the same is true about training
financially. That when you initially went for shared parental leave, that you took a financial hit, and that you said that might have improved. For listeners who might not understand fully what's involved, would you be able to share with us a bit of?
So, oh God, I should know more about this because I was on a brilliant working group. There's the BCS have an amazing document, and Rebecca Dobson. God, did Rebecca? She chaired it. I think she chaired the working group. God, I can't remember. But it was full of stars and amazing people. Rod Stables was on there. Alina Hua, who's one of the research fellows, as Tommy's was on there. Shazia Hussain was on there, and it was a women in cardiology geared working group, and dealt with lots of female specific issues, but actually things that also crossed over. And in particular things like shared parental leave. So I can only encourage everybody, go and check out the BCS website. That document is out there, published free on the BCS website. And I should say that everything I say is superseded by that if I'm wrong. But when I did shared parental leave, what happened was my wife's statutory maternity pay, which for a percentage of her year was quite good. Actually, I think it was about 75% of her pay, something like that, 80% of her pay. All of it went down to shared parental leave pay, which is not anything like as good as the 80% of her as a nurse. So her pay went massively down. And admittedly, I would be going up from nothing to that. And I think I probably didn't do the calculations carefully enough before I chose to do it, because I was in a bit of a blind panic and I just needed to come out and see and help her with the twins because we were struggling quite badly. But I think I would say to anybody who's considering it and has a better financial brain than me and less panic and on their time, to really think carefully about SPL, shared parental leave, and see whether, because at that stage I think it probably would have been more cost effective for me to just go on unpaid leave and her to keep her maternity pay than for us to come down to shared parental leave. Or it was quite close. Like I said, the rules have changed. The government have brought it a bit up to date, and I think it is because they want people to take the shared parental leave, and if people aren't taking it because it's a financial hit, then they've failed in what they trying to do with it, which is make an equality of female and male parental care.
I suppose there are multiple ways to do it, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
What percentage are you on at the moment?
So I'm about to come down next week to 80%.
80. Okay. And So when you've after this period, when you've been doing less than full time for a a continuous period, how have you found the financial implications of that? Have you found that they've been difficult to work with, or that they've just been outweighed by the fact that you're spending more time with your children?
Well, listen, they're different dimensions, aren't they? Like, if you can afford to do it and live in a way that's comfortable for you, and you want to do it. But they're kind of different aspects of a decision, aren't they? There's a financial decision and there's an emotional decision. And if you've got to do it as an emotional decision, then I guess the trick is to try and find a way to make it work, whatever you can. I should say it is going to be so much harder. This is going to be my first part-time stint in the southeast, up in London. It's going to be tricky. It's going to be really tricky because cost of living is coming up. And southeast is more expensive. In the southwest, standards of living were so much higher. Bills and costs were so much lower. Doing stuff inside the M25 part-time is tricky, and I don't know what the answer to that is, and I don't think there is a good one at the moment. No, it's an important question. And the finance thing, I'm glad you asked, Johnny, because people don't ask about it. It becomes do I want to go part-time? How is my training going to be affected? I want to see my kids. Those are the three kind of things that but nobody ever thinks about the practicalities of the finances, and they are important.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I understand, if you're less than full-time and you want to locum, it's written into your contract that you can't locum on the days that you're less than full-time. Is that correct? And how does sort of locum work around it?
Pass on the days that you're on your fixed day. I think that's taking the mick a little bit. I personally, I have to say, I think if you're, so my day off a week is Wednesdays, and it's because my wife is working that day from on a 12-hour shift. If I wanted to locum, I suppose, I'm not sure about the contract thing, and I'm a bit loath to say it's taking the mick a little bit, actually, because you do what you need to. You definitely can, and a lot of places fill in locums at other times. I know that for a fact. And I was just talking to somebody today who is part-time during their academic, during their PhD, and he does locum at a private hospital on those days to up his wage to a survivable level. Honestly, I think it's I think I retract my take the mick thing. I think it's a bit not on for any employer to tell you what you can and can't do on your off day. They have to decide on whether they can offer you less than full-time training, and there are legally protected reasons that you can choose to do it. And like I said, I've always had everyone say sure, and I'm absolutely positive that Tommy's, where I am at the moment, would be totally fine with me locuming on that. I haven't tried it. I wouldn't because I can't.
Well, yeah, because your days are specific to your wife's schedule. But I suppose
but I think go on, sorry, Johnny.
I suppose if all of your free time sort of goes into a specific pot, and you find out later on that you once you've been part-time for a while, that you need a little bit now. I suppose it's how it works.
I think an employer would be mad to say no. Because number one, they've got the locum gap, right? This is presuming you're locuming at the place that employs you. But even if you're not, I think an employer would be mad to say no, because if you can't, it is entirely possible that you need to locum for extra money, but that you can't have the extra. You don't have the extra. You don't. I don't know. My wife's just walked in, completely killed my train of thought. It's a conceivable situation where you still need to be part-time for totally valid reasons, but there are bits where you need to and can locum.
So perhaps they would be happy with ad hoc, as and when, but on the routine, that's would be frowned upon because of the fact that obviously you need the time for what you're doing outside of work.
I think if you went part-time to locum 1 day a week at the private hospital down the road, most people would see that as taking the mick a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If you went part-time for childcare or another reason, and then found that a few of those days were free and you needed the financial support of locums, I think everybody would understand that.
Yeah.
I think with all these things, it's about if you communicate openly with most hospital trusts that I've ever worked in, all hospital trusts that I've ever worked in, they're pretty reasonable about these things. Yeah. HR is often painted to be these beasts that don't understand and don't care, but that's not what I found, actually, I have to say.
Yeah. What would be your number one bit of advice for someone considering going less than full time in cardiology?
Don't consider how much extra the training is going to take you. Don't worry about getting to consultant quickly. Just consider two things. Do you want or need to go less than full time for your own health and your own life? And can you afford to go less than full time? And if the answer to the first one is yes, and the answer to the second one is yes, then just do it. Just do it. Yeah. If you can't afford it, think there might be discussions that you could have, like we talked about, like extra locum shifts here and there, and other ways and means of trying to make it work. But if you want it, just don't worry about the CCT date. That will happen. And we're a long time consultants. And I've actually got 5 children, including my 2 step kids, and they're big. But my little boy is 7, and he's gone from 0 to 7 so blooming quickly. And if I hadn't gone less than full time, there would be a huge percentage of that I would have completely missed. So do it if you want it and can afford it.
Yeah, well, I think you make some really important points that, frankly, going at 80% means that you finish a few months, maybe a year later, but though all of those years can be so much better.
Yeah.
So that makes it worth it.
The one thing we haven't talked about, I don't know whether you've got time to, and this might need an edit, is the bit of the elephant in the room in the how is progression when you're part-time? How does that work, and does it work? Is that something you wanted to talk about, or do you want to just leave that for another?
Well, I think it's an important point.
It's hard. It's really hard. And I said all kinds of things when I talked about my academic job and the fact that I was going to try and be part-time during my academic jobs, about how you've got to dedicate extra time, maybe once the kids are in bed. It's about being flexible. It's about thinking strategically about what lists are on what day and aiming your career in certain days. Those are all true things and important things to say, but that doesn't take away the fact that having your procedural experience and your exposure to clinical cardiology fractured in more than it already is, which is a lot, makes progression painfully slow. So do be aware that it's okay to feel that you're not as good as your colleagues, because that can happen.
Yeah, I mean, we talked before about how it was competency based and not necessarily time based at reaching these thresholds. Do you think that being part-time impedes your ability to meet these competency goals?
Yes. It's a greater detriment than just a 20% loss.
Okay.
Because it's not a linear relationship. Like the more you're in, the more you benefit, and the more you're in, the more you benefit more of that. And it gets better and better. And the reverse is true. If you're doing an angiogram once every 2 weeks, your progression is glacial. And doing an angiogram once a week is more than double as effective, and the law becomes, that's my personal opinion, because I would just so kill to have continuous procedural experience.
Do you want to be a proceduralist?
I do. Yeah, I'd like to do intervention. That might change. And I've, spoken to some, fairly high-profile people who at one point wanted to do intervention, and then life has changed them around to wanting to do other things for various different reasons. But at the moment, the thing that excites me, the thing that makes me happy, is cath lab and stents. So that's where I want to go. But it's hard. It's really hard.
You make a really important point about about reaching the competencies, and I think particularly for what's relevant for us listening as starter members is that they've made it INT 3 years, and we've got a new curriculum now. That means that we'll dual accredit. These two things, do you think they're combinable with less than full time?
So you're asking me, and I've been fairly open on various different platforms about what I think about the GIM coming in. Excuse my sausage dog, who's a bit of a Larry. So GIM, extra GIM during training is a disaster for cardiology trainees. It was a thing designed purely to fill rota gaps on med-reg rotas, and with little to no understanding from non-cardiologists about just how much there is in the curriculum to get through. There is so much in cardiology. And then if you put in extra GIM and you go less than full time, full respect to your generation of shape of training trainees coming through with the new GIM trainee, and even huge amounts of respect to anybody going less than full time. I'm sure you'll make it. I'm sure it's possible, but my God, it's going to be hard. And I think that was such a big error. But
all right. To finish on one positive thing.
Positive, let's go. That was really negative, wasn't it?
Would like to have known before you went into less than full time?
I think I would have liked to have been more switched on into the financial implications. I knew that I was going to enjoy being closer to the kids and having more time for my kids, or whatever it is you go less than full time for. And I knew that the procedural aspect was going to be disastrous in some ways, because I'd spoken to a respiratory trainee who was struggling with her bronchoscopy, and so I knew that was going to happen. But I don't think I was quite attuned to how much of a financial kick in the nuts it is.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Josh. And I think your insights have been and will be invaluable for a lot of people listening to this. As you said, many people haven't thought of it, and hopefully, this might make people think. If they're in a situation like you're in, considering less than full time before it becomes unmanageable.
You're quite welcome, and thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for the opportunity, as people always say during research things.
Brilliant.